On this week's show, germs, they're everywhere, but is the way we're avoiding them inviting superbugs? But first, are private investigators and divorce lawyers reading your Facebook wall? I'm Holland Cook in Washington. This is The Big Picture on RT America. Facebook is fun, and you might think it's free. Tell that to divorce defendants who went to the cleaners when careless social media posts came back to haunt them. A survey by the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers found 81% of divorce cases involving social networking evidence, mainly from Facebook. Are you exposed? And what to do if you're suspicious? Let's ask Kristen Ruby, CEO, Ruby Media Group, a public relations and social media agency in Manhattan. She's a social media expert, and she has pertinent experience with private investigations. Her website is a great resource, rubymediagroup.com. Also joining us from RT's New York Bureau is divorce trial attorney James Sexton, whose 1,000-plus clients' marriages has dissolved over everything from trysts with the nanny or personal trainer to uneven division of carpool duties and, of course, money. He's the author of If You're in My Office, It's Already Too Late, a divorce lawyer's guide to staying together. Welcome both.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Jim, despite your resume, you call your book a how not to book for the people who have not set foot in your office. Why should we take staying together advice from somebody who lives in Splitsville?
You know, it's a great question. The truth is that doctors have been writing books about how to stay healthy for quite since the history of books, and people are still getting sick. And diet gurus have been writing books about how to, stay fit, and people are still wandering around fat. So I think sometimes there's a lot to learn from watching the people who see what goes wrong about what to do right.
Chris, to avoid ending up in Jim's office, what are some of the fundamental social media don'ts people should avoid?
There are so many social media don'ts to avoid. One, you want to make sure you are not looking or sending direct messages to members of the opposite sex. You want to not leave comments on members of the opposite sex's wall. You want to not accidentally reply to a story of a member of the opposite sex who may or may not be someone you have even dated at one point, and then keep a conversation going. You want to make sure that you're not being tagged in photos with members of the opposite sex one-on-one if that makes your partner feel uncomfortable. There are so many different things here, but the most important thing is to have social media boundaries up front so you even understand what the do's or don'ts are with your partner.
And even if you have been judicious about who can or can't see your wall, some of the people who can still share what's there with some of the people who can't, right, Chris?
Of course they can. Yeah, I mean, that's the other problem here, especially with Facebook. They continue to change privacy settings, so people think, if it's only my friends, no one else can see it. Well, that's actually not true. We see that also in investigative work all the time. What you see, what you say on social media can be screenshotted. Same thing with Facebook Live stories, Instagram Live stories. People think because it's disappearing for only 24 hours, no one's ever going to see it again. I'm here to say that's just a flat-out lie. And so if it's screenshotted, anyone can use it against you.
Now, Jim, counselor.
Chris is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris has a great point there. Chris couldn't be more right, and it really is true that people can be as careful as they want in their curation of things. But just as Chris said, once it's out there, it's out there. I have endless clients who've ensured that they have their spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse blocked, but they don't realize that there's a mutual friend in common, someone they knew during their marriage, who's feeding all of that social media stuff that they think is blocked from their soon-to-be ex-spouse, and it's really just being fed right to this person and used against them in a court of law. So, she's absolutely correct. Screenshots, screen captures, screen grabs. Before I walked in to the studio today, I received a whole array of screenshots from a client of mine from her husband's Facebook wall that she got from an old acquaintance, and they're going to be used against this guy in a custody trial. So it happens way more than anyone would think.
Yeah, once it's out there, it's out there. So based on Chris's advice just now, and in a way that you can talk about on TV, Counselor, share some social media horror stories that have crossed your desk in the divorce cases you've handled.
Well, I mean, if I had $1 for every social media horror story in connection with a divorce, I'd have precisely the same number of dollars I probably have. The truth is, divorce law it's become a tremendous source of information mining for us. From fathers who say that they're limiting their alcohol use, who then get tagged in a friend's photo at a bar with empty shot glasses in front of them, to photos where people get tagged in the background. I had a client I talk about in my book who actually ended up on a screen capture from a Toby Keith concert that he had been at with his secret girlfriend that his wife didn't know about, and his wife cruelly found out about it through looking at Facebook and just stumbling on this particular picture. So, putting anything on your Facebook that you wouldn't want put on the big screen in Times Square is probably not a great idea. And no matter how much curating you do of the people who you communicate with, it's just such a big pool of users out there in the world of social media, and you hang around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. So it's hard to resist the temptations that come with it.
Well, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg reckons that people have really gotten comfortable not only sharing more information and different kinds, but more openly and with more people. Chris, about the psychology of social media, why do we overshare?
I think we overshare for a number of reasons, but I also think it's because chemically, I think we're almost becoming addicted to that rush. There's been recent studies that have shown that social media usage repeatedly triggers actually a dopamine high in the user that does it. And so the problem is becoming that it's not just social media anymore. People say, oh, it's social media, it doesn't really matter. No. I think social media is actually replacing so many real-world interactions, and that doesn't do it justice. So I think what's happening is social media is essentially replacing the role of our partner. So if you're getting, a dopamine high off of posting something important and you get 50 likes, well, those 50 likes are suddenly more important than the 1 like of the person that you've chosen to be with you because there's just more, right? You're just getting more of it. And so the problem is if you can get that dopamine high and that rush from people, online, then what is the role of your partner in that?
Right.
Are they still even there? Do you need them? Well, not really.
It's actually happening on a biochemical level. Hey, Jim, in chapter 14 of your book, if you're in my office, it's already too late. You define the 5 kinds of infidelity, and number 1 being what you term the freshly discovered soulmate, often discovered on Facebook. Describe how that slippery slope works.
Yeah, I think what Chris just said about, the manner in which we get this feedback from social media and the way it reinforces our pleasure centers is absolutely key. If you really think about it, when you're in the greatest moments of your life, when you're with your kids, you're with your spouse, you're having a wonderful meal, something like that, that's not when you're checking your social media. You're checking your social media when you're lonely, when you're bored, when you're sitting, on the subway, when you're sitting by yourself. And so you're using it when you're at a time where you're feeling very susceptible and you're feeling very disconnected from yourself and from your life. Now, meanwhile, what are you looking at? You're looking at an incredibly curated version of someone's life. You're looking at their greatest hits. No one puts on their Facebook or their Instagram, all the pictures of the boring meals they had and the parts of the vacation where they got sunburned. They put up all the pictures where they're having a great time and they're happy. So think about that combination. We've got a perfect storm. We've got a situation where you're looking at a curated greatest hits of everyone else's life while you're sitting in these boring, sullen moments of your own life. And that's going to make everybody feel dissatisfied with what they're doing in that particular moment and think everyone else is having a better time and a better relationship than them. So the idea of the freshly discovered soulmate, it's really just about people being reconnected on social media with people from their past, sometimes from high school, from college, a simpler time when they had less stress and less difficulties in their time, seeing this curated version of that person's present day life, and then just reconnecting with that person and feeling this deep sense of longing, because again, we're using this social media at times where we're not feeling deeply connected to our present moment, to our lives, and that just creates for people this sense that where they should be, that the grass on the other side of the fence is so much greener than where they are.
Right. We're almost out of time. But, Chris, while we have you, we're talking about how careless use of social media can derail personal relationships. But your website, rubymediagroup.com, has lots for businesses. You're generous with advice for healthcare and real estate and other businesses. I got about 30 seconds, so don't overthink it. Right off the top of your head, what are some of the common thread mistakes businesses make on social media?
Oh, so many. I mean, the number one rule of thumb is that they're spamming people, right? So if they're not really investing in the proper content marketing, they're making it all about them and not about, their customer, their client base. My number one tip for businesses to consider is, when in doubt, leave it out.
Right.
Another one is that social media should enhance your business, not take away from it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Kristen Ruby, Ruby Media Group, and attorney and author James Sexton.